Hello dear early access players, welcome to another episode of Stationeers News. It's the 12th of February 2026, and today we're gonna take a short look at what the developers are looking into for future updates. But first, let's talk about the multiplayer update. The intro says this update involves some highly technical work to improve how multiplayer works at a base level, focusing on how multiplayer updates are sent by hosts and received by clients. These changes target not just multiplayer bugs, but also have profound impact on performance as well. Such changes will become very noticeable with larger bases in particular. Then there's some details here about the implementation, and that this doesn't exclusively speed up server-hosted games, but locally hosted games will benefit as well. Here they're mentioning the open source game networking engine RackNet. In this Stationeers update, they're using a much better integration of RackNet, which might also lead to performance improvements, and they plan to use the significantly better network and multiplayer monitoring tools that it has to work on further improvements that this new integration makes possible. This hasn't happened yet, but the new integration is already in, so this may already help. Well, and here's a big one. Because of this new RackNet integration, they had to use a new Unity engine version. It's still the 2022 version, but it's a much newer one. And we'll talk about this later in the video, because this also finally patches an in practice pretty harmless security problem that this old Unity version had been having. Why didn't they update it earlier? Because under the hood, things are ridiculously complex. It's not like you're just getting a new graphics card driver. The engine update could have all kinds of unforeseen consequences. That's why they didn't make the decision lightly. But now they had enough reason to finally take this step. And here they're talking about some upcoming changes, things they're looking into for future updates. I'll talk about these in detail later in this video. Then here's a section about some things that changed, one of which being extremely significant. The arc furnace so far was releasing the gases of the ore that you were smelting at 0 degrees Celsius, but now it will release hot gas. So people who were using this exploit to cool their station can no longer do this. The arc furnace now outputs hot gases. The INS INS IC10 instruction has been fixed, its arguments had been in the wrong order. And then finally here we have the entire changelog, so you have to pause the video to read this, or follow the link in the description. So, about this upcoming changes section of this news post. The new atmospherics device for liquids should be the liquid filtration that I showed you in the previous news episode, linked in the description. The upcoming content for rockets is, I believe, a way for you to transport arbitrary items. I hope you know that you can use rockets to transport from one landing pad to another. So it's not like we're missing trains, though I'd like to have those, but we can already transport ore from our deep miner outposts by rocket. And now I believe they're expanding this so we can also transport items. But here are a few things that the RocketWorks Stationeers team is looking into for future updates. This is not a roadmap, it's just something that they currently have on their menu of things they want to deal with. No guarantees, no promises. Except nuclear reactors, the first point, is pretty much 99% promised to come at some point, which would also fit the 500 kilowatt super heavy cable that we have now. Nuclear reactors, like rockets, will probably use a small grid construction, where you have to puzzle together whatever's needed to make this thing work. So, again, not a crafting recipe, but true engineering that'll build on everything that you've learned so far about the game's mechanics, like for example phase change. The Terraforming DLC, post 1.0, not before. Here, Rocket is saying, we have mostly completed work on the Terraforming expansion. However, we don't think an expansion DLC is appropriate while the game is in early access, so we have it on hold until we have the game out of early access. And about this, you should know that the developers will let the community vote when they think it is the time to ask that question. And they stress that after version 1.0, nothing will change. They will keep developing this game. Stationeers will not become stagnant and will never die. Personally, I find the Terraforming DLC announcement here peculiar, because for a long time now they have focused on only developing things that they can rely will not have to be changed as the game changes, because there's just not time and money for that. So what potential conclusions can we draw? Version 1.0 is not far away. No, that's not the right conclusion. The announced hospital or hotel missions or other campaign-like stuff, or secrets or treasures that you can find in the world, are nowhere to be seen yet. So personally I'm convinced that it will take a few years still before we see a version 1.0 of Stationeers. So what other conclusion could be true? That whatever goes into the Terraforming DLC builds on something that will not change. And what is that? That's the atmospheric simulation of Stationeers. The most storm-tested, thoroughly stable aspect of the entire project. By the way, according to something a developer said, and I'm sorry I couldn't find the source again, there are multiple gases, not just one, like hydrogen, that are ready to be released into the game. So apparently they have abstracted things in the background sufficiently so that new gases, if they actually come in, do not require revamping the Terraforming DLC, which again will not come out for a long time, yet they're mentioning here that they want to work on that a bit. Another possible conclusion, and mind you, this is not an either-or thing, all conclusions could be kinda true, is that the Terraforming DLC may be a major product, which I believe to have heard will be sold full price, so it's not $10 and you're done. So maybe this will not just be some clever expansion of the existing game simulation and some appropriate devices, instead it may turn Stationeers into a quite different game. But I rather believe the main aspect that it would bring in is a campaign, the campaign to change the world. And this, of course, in my opinion, cannot be sold before there isn't already something like a proper campaign in the game, because else, obviously, there would be tons of complaints that something like an actual campaign has to be purchased as an extra DLC, and the devs certainly won't make that kind of mistake. Next up, Space Station and World Base in same level, in progress. I did already show you that in a news episode. In principle, this works already, so it can't be too far away. Travel to New World, migration to New World using Rocket. This, I believe, was how Stationeers playthrough worked a few years ago, where you basically have a new game plus by bringing the materials that you want, taking off with a rocket, and then starting in the next world. Which reminds me, some user has suggested at some point that it would be cool to have the worlds themselves be the campaign. You can only play the first one until you have reached a certain point, then you can play the next one, and this could be that. Of course, that's not a golden idea, because it's so much fun to play the other worlds, and some are not so much fun, depending on whom you ask. So absolutely gatekeeping that doesn't seem like the right idea, and they're not saying that here at all anyway. I just wonder if some kind of mechanism like that could come in any meaningful way without hard gatekeeping. Next point, vehicle improvements. Some experimentation already exists in creative. I don't know what this is referring to. We cannot spawn the large rover, we can spawn the small one, and we can even print it. That's normal now. The shuttle can be flown around, and it can even be spawned in creative. Anyway, I don't know what they're referring to here. Deep miner changes, improvements in content. In a recent news episode I showed you that we now have a combustion deep miner, so that things run just like the combustion centrifuge, and it depends on how daring you are, how fast that thing will run, because you can use normal fuel, 2 parts volatiles, 1 part oxygen, or rocket fuel, 1 part N2O, 1 part volatiles, which, if you have never done that, is very tricky to do, because it just loves to spontaneously combust. Okay, that's that. Now you might be interested to know that there was a security hole in the Unity engine. I mean, every bit of software at some point has those, and actually many over time. The particular security hole I'm talking about here is one that was fixed between the Unity version that Stationeers had to this very update for years, but that is now fixed by the change to the newer Unity version. Again, it wasn't easy for the devs to make this switch. The day Unity revealed this security problem to the world, which was the 3rd of October 2025, less than half a year ago, Valve released a Steam update that makes sure that the security hole cannot be exploited as long as you run a game through Steam. Because there are various things that you can execute via the Steam client by just running a command. One, for example, launches a game. And yes, you can hand some arguments to that game, meaning the game will be started with some additional information told to it. And Steam makes sure that the particular arguments described in the Unity security report cannot be handed through. By the way, Unity is saying here, the patch was available from October the 2nd, 2025, which is when Steam reacted, but the actual discovery date of this security problem was the 4th of June, 2025. That's quite a few months before that. Anyway, they're describing the hole like this. It could enable local code execution or information disclosure at the privilege level of the vulnerable application, meaning that if a game would be executed with administrator privileges, that's the level on which the exploitative code would also be executed. They were saying there was no evidence of exploitation of the hole, nor had there been any impact on users or customers. The AI Gemini 3 describes the problem like this. The security hole is a critical argument injection and untrusted search path vulnerability that affected the Unity runtime for over 8 years, stretching back to version 2017.1. The core issue was a lack of validation. The engine would blindly accept specific arguments that commanded it to load external code libraries, DLLs, .so or .dylib files, from arbitrary locations on the device's storage, Because these libraries were loaded before many security checks or sandboxing measures were fully initialized, the engine would execute any code contained within those files with the same permissions as the game itself. 4 specific arguments were identified as the primary vectors for this exploit, and those are the exact arguments that Steam has been blocking since October 2025. Better late than never, huh? According to Gemini, this hole was actually exploited, and generally the only way for a developer to get rid of this problem was to update the Unity editor, then run another rebuild, and then, of course, to re-upload the game to whatever platform. So regarding Stationeers, we were safe from this exploit thanks to Steam this whole time, but the executable itself was not protected from it because the Unity version hadn't been upgraded yet, but now it has been. So Stationeers' outlier status, it being such a niche game, made it tricky for the devs to keep up with Unity updates, but at the same time made it super unlikely for anyone to ever try to exploit this, because too few people know Stationeers in the first place. Alright, that's it for today. See you again next time.